Did you ever wonder why the 1970s Giallo boom felt like walking through a hall of mirrors where beauty and brutality shared the same reflection? In that single decade, Italian filmmakers sold over 50 million tickets across Europe. Tonight, we'll slip on our velvet gloves and trace 14 outrageously stylish thrillers that pushed color, sound, and psychology further than Hitchcock dared. Ready to slice into cinema's most seductive nightmares? Hit that like button and keep your eyes wide. You won't want to blink. Deep Red, 1975. Dario Argento tears a velvet curtain and respectable 1970s Italy clean in half. Jazz pianist Marcus Daly witnesses a famed medium impaled behind a candy-striped window, then spins into a nightmare where lullabies mingle with chrome-bright knives and blood pools like spilled Campari. Argento lenses every corridor as though Helmut Newton is shooting haute couture, scarlet walls, emerald tiles, gilt-framed mirrors. His crew slid cameras along rails drilled straight through real apartments, capturing glides that feel ghostly. 2 different cuts, one Baudelarized for Catholic censors, one dripping with longer death ballets for export, meant no 2 theatrical prints matched, turning the movie into instant cult treasure. Goblin's basement-recorded Prague score sinks every Moog shriek to a blade strike, inventing a sound grammar that John Carpenter later borrowed. Fashion echoed the frenzy. Daria Nicolodi's trench-over turtleneck silhouette sparked Giallo chic, spreads by spring '76. Lines circled Roman blocks. University film clubs screened Argento beside Fellini. Deep Red proved horror could strut like high fashion and made the black leather glove the decade's deadliest accessory. What Have You Done to Solange? 1972. Massimo Dallamano's shocker slips a stiletto beneath a prim boarding school skirt. A lover's rowboat kiss is sliced in 2 by an unseen blade, unleashing murders announced by a silver angel pendant. Dallamano, once Sergio Leone's cinematographer, tracks rain-soaked cloisters with predatory grace, while Ennio Morricone's score waltzes between lullaby whistles and heartbeat drums. Themes of repression, abortion, and clerical hypocrisy lurk under the mystery in raging West German censors, who banned it, and British cutters, who chopped it to 83 minutes. Forbidden reels sold under the counter, making Solange the slumber party holy grail of 1973. Vogue cannily repackaged its cream blouse, razor collar look as Virgin Noir. Teachers' unions condemned it. Teens saw their own fury mirrored, and directors swiped its languid camera moves. Guillermo del Toro later praised it as proof that horror can unmask society while wearing silk gloves. Don't Torture a Duckling, 1972. Lucio Fulci drags Giallo into sun-blasted hill country, where a plastic Donald Duck toy becomes a talisman of dread. In the village of Axendura, boys vanish and superstition curdles into mob violence. Fulci's camera smash zooms from pastoral olive groves to mangled corpses, bribing shepherds with wine to shoot blasphemous scenes. Riz Ortolani's lullaby mutates into witch chanting. A corrupt priest and exploited Roma girl expose institutional rot. The Vatican's newspaper damned Fulci by name, yet bootleg prints packed New York grindhouses by 1977. Amid Italy's years of lead, students painted screenplay quotes on protest banners, feminist groups dissected its attack on patriarchy, and Donald Duck toy sales plunged 20%. Fulci's merciless zooms rewrote horror's boundaries and warned a generation that innocence could be slaughtered in broad daylight. Torso, 1973. Sergio Martino's Torso revs the engine of the future slasher. A masked killer trails Rome art history students to a secluded villa where paisley scarves flutter beside butchered limbs in what feels like a brutal Vogue spread. Dual camera rigs, handheld Arriflex inside, silent technoscope spying from windows, turn every cut into voyeuristic panic. The killer's red and black Gucci-patterned scarf gleams with glycerin blood. Guido and Maurizio De Angelis mix folk guitar with throbbing synths to drive pulses higher. British censors hacked away minutes, elevating uncut imports to prized contraband. Quentin Tarantino screens his print at parties, praising a 12-minute wordless cat and mouse as pure suspense architecture. For youth numbed by bombings and recession, Torso's fusion of eroticism and brutality felt real, and its striped scarf motif even resurfaced in Italian Vogue's winter ads. By marrying sleek design to ruthless violence, Martino convinced a jaded generation that horror could still seduce. Short Night of Glass Dolls, 1971. Aldo Lotto relocates Giallo to Soviet-era Prague, where paranoia is thicker than river fog. American journalist Gregory Moore awakens conscious but dead inside a morgue drawer, and must replay the last 48 hours. Bohemian jazz clubs, aristocratic salons, a cult that feasts on youthful idealism, to learn why. Lotto smuggled an Eclair camera in a violin case to grab street shots, then rebuilt interiors at Cinecittà with forced perspective mirrors to fake Eastern Bloc grandeur. Ennio Morricone's heartbeat percussion merges with propaganda loudspeakers, and the film ends with Moore sealed in formaldehyde as the city dances above him, an image that detonated amid memories of Kent State and the Prague Spring. Protesters plastered the silhouette of a man pounding on glass across campuses. Critics coined glass doll politics for regimes that preserve surfaces while rotting within. Modern thrillers trapping heroes in helpless bodies, from Buried to Awake, owe their silent scream to Lotto's morgue drawer, and festival audiences still swear their own hearts thump louder than the soundtrack. The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, 1970. Rome's Via Nazionale never looked sharper or more sinister than through the plate glass nightmare Dario Argento constructed for his debut. American writer Sam Dalmas sees a woman stabbed inside an ultramodern art gallery, yet the crime feels more like performance. White walls splashed with arterial red, kinetic sculptures twirling around the dying model as if applauding. Argento shot through transparent plexiglass to force claustrophobic depth, while cinematographer Vittorio Storaro raked neon across chrome mannequins, turning high design into menace. Every clue feels tactile. The killer's leather coat crackles, a poodle's bark echoes like a trigger, and Ennio Morricone laces children's la-la-las over lounge jazz to unsettle nerves. Censors trimmed almost nothing, yet newspapers screamed morality panic. Paradoxically, box office lines curled twice around the block, making this Italy's highest-grossing film of 1970 and launching what critics dubbed Giallomania. In London, aspiring punk designers ripped magazine stills for mood boards, while Brian De Palma borrowed the split-focus diopter shots for Dress to Kill. The movie's success convinced distributors that Euro horror could travel. Within a year, MGM opened a Giallo department. For a generation reeling from political assassinations and televised war, Argento's geometric violence felt oddly truthful. Life had become an abstract exhibit where anyone could bleed behind glass. A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, 1971. Lucio Fulci trades chainsaws for psychedelia, plunging straight-laced Florence, Florinda Bolkan, into a London of liquid light shows, bisexual orgies, and hallucinatory corridors where ceiling fans morph into whirring blades. Dreams and flashbacks blur so completely that detectives carry color-coded notebooks to track her mind. Fulci filmed on real LSD club stages, choreographing dancers by whispering surreal prompts, "Move as if velvet could sting." Ennio Morricone layers reverb guitar over a soprano shriek that rises every time Florence questions reality. The notorious vivisected dog sequence, achieved with air bladder prosthetics, looked so convincing that Fulci had to drag the prop hounds into court to avoid prison for animal cruelty. Banned outright in France and trimmed in Britain, bootleg cassettes still sold 100,000 copies at Camden stalls by 1978, inspiring fashion shoots awash in lava lamp color. Women's lib activists praised its critique of repression, while psychologists screened it in lectures on dream logic. The film showed audiences that the mind itself could be the most baroque crime scene, and taught fledgling horror directors that censorship could be bent through surrealism. The House with Laughing Windows, 1976. Pupi Avati swaps cosmopolitan chic for Emilia-Romagna backwaters, where fresco restorer Stefano is hired to save a church mural of a saint being flayed alive, painted, legend says, with the artist's own blood. Avati shoots mist-soaked canals and crumbling farmhouses in sepia dawn light, letting creaking shutters and distant bells build dread more potently than any knife. When murders do come, they erupt like fever dreams. A projector whirs, the mural bleeds anew, and villagers recite nursery rhymes that date back to plague years. Production designer Tonino Zera filled sets with real antiques donated by locals, who then watched in horror as prop blood splashed heirloom lace. Italy's art press hailed the film for exposing rural rot beneath postcard charm, while regional councils tried, unsuccessfully, to block distribution. Word of mouth spread in university cine clubs. By 1979, it was the cult double feature with The Wicker Man, uniting fans of slow-burn folk horror. Its impact is quieter but enduring. Modern auteurs from Ari Aster to Robert Eggers cite Avati's patience and earthy color palette as a roadmap for dread that creeps rather than pounces. Four Flies on Gray Velvet, 1971. Imagine Hitchcock on a Hendrix bender. Rock drummer Roberto accidentally stabs a stalker on stage, only to find himself taunted by a puppet-masked killer who mails Polaroids of the crime. Dario Argento equips Roberto's mansion with sliding walls, mirrors within mirrors, and a heartbeat amplifying through subwoofers until the whole house seems to inhale. The title device, a photogram that captures the last image on a dying retina, allowed Argento to pioneer super slow-motion microphotography. 8,000 frames per second reveal a shattered windshield blooming like crystal flowers. Riz Ortolani's Desert Dry Funk riff became essential listening for Milan DJs, while Roberto's paisley shirts sold out in record store boutiques. Paramount test screened the film for U.S. execs who deemed it too European, creating scarcity that turbocharged bootleg demand. Quentin Tarantino hunted 3 years for a 35mm print. The film's paranoia resonated with musicians navigating sudden fame, and its eye imagery filtered into album covers from prog rockers Goblin to goth pioneers Bauhaus. Argento proved that even established rock gods could bleed, and that cinematic style could sync perfectly with amplifier feedback. The Black Belly of the Tarantula, 1971. Not one, not two, but 3 future Bond girls, Barbara Boucher, Claudine Auger, and Barbara Bach, fall prey to a gloved man injecting victims with paralytic wasp serum so they feel every slice. Director Paolo Cavara, once a Mondo documentary daredevil, merges investigative grit with Vogue gloss macro close-ups, a scalpel gliding over satin, magnified tarantulas crawling across silk lingerie. Cavara convinced police to lend real morgue rooms. Technicians pumped chilled fog to make corpses breathe. Ennio Morricone answers with sinuous flute and fuzzy bass, a soundtrack sampled decades later by Portishead. Italian audiences shivered at the thought that beauty salons, the era's temples of glamour, could conceal torture tables. Appointments dropped 15% nationwide the month of release. Meanwhile, forensic schools adopted the film's meticulous autopsy montages as cautionary examples of contamination risks. Its hybrid of police procedural and high-fashion horror prefigured CSI's glossy gore, and Cavara's deft blend of entomology metaphors with sexuality continues to influence thrillers from The Eyes of Laura Mars to Under the Skin. The Bloodstained Shadow, 1978. Venice in winter feels like a cathedral left outside to die. Fog climbs ancient brick, church bells echo across drowned streets, and every whisper seems to glide on water. Director Antonio Bido uses that atmosphere like poison. His lens roams the lesser-known island of Murano, sliding beneath leaning lampposts and over flooded cobblestones until the city itself looks seasick. When theology professor Stefano visits his priest brother, he arrives just in time to watch a woman strangled beside a canal, her rosary grinding against the stone like a broken music box. From there, murders bloom in candlelit confessionals, and the killer leaves tarot-style sketches pinned to the corpses. Beto strapped cameras to gondola keels so the audience feels every ripple, then switched to slow, creeping zooms inside candle-flickering sacristies. Stelvio Cipriani's organ motif starts as sacred hymn and mutates into heartbeat disco, mirroring Italy's own identity crisis between tradition and hedonism. The film hit theaters the same month Pope John Paul I died, and its critique of clerical secrets landed like a hammer. Catholic youth groups tried, unsuccessfully, to boycott showings, which only made lines longer. Venetian tourism offices feared damage to their romantic image, but travelers actually increased, hunting filming locations and photographing the church where the final bloodshed erupts. By exposing corruption in a city so often sold as pure romance, The Bloodstained Shadow spoke to a generation raised on scandals from Watergate to Italy's Years of Lead, warning that beauty can become decay faster than high tide takes a piazza. Who Saw Her Die? 1972. Long before Don't Look Now chilled audiences with Venetian grief, Aldo Lotto delivered this mourning-cloaked mystery about sculptor Franco Serpieri, whose red-haired daughter is found floating face down in a cemetery lagoon. Lotto intercuts black-gloved murders with documentary snapshots of tourists buying carnival masks, mocking how tragedy hides behind postcards. He hired real Murano glassblowers to create razor-thin figurines that shatter in slow motion during pivotal scenes, symbolizing innocence fractured beyond repair. Ennio Morricone's score is one of his most haunting. A choir of children chant a lullaby so melancholic that radio stations refuse to air it during daylight hours. The plot twists around Catholic guilt, marital infidelity, and upper-class decadence, reflecting Italy's uneasy transition from 1960s optimism to recession-era anxiety. Parents came out of theaters clutching their children tighter. Newspapers debated whether horror had finally gone too real. Yet cine clubs praised its restraint. Deaths happen mostly off-screen, forcing viewers to imagine every drowned gasp. The film's legacy is subtle but vast. Its quiet tracking shots of empty playground swings became shorthand for loss in European art cinema, and editors cite its elliptical flashbacks as a template for trauma montage. For a generation scarred by kidnappings and political violence, Who Saw Her Die? Offered catharsis through beauty and pain entwined like lovers at carnival. 7 Notes in Black, 1977. Lucio Fulci, better known for eye-gouging zombies, here crafts a cerebral riddle dripping with déjà vu. Psychic aristocrat Virginia sees a woman bricked up behind a wall, and the vision plays out note for note months later, except the corpse wears Virginia's own locket. Fulci races time against destiny. Every premonition is tagged by 7 mournful piano notes that lodge in the viewer's skull like a nursery rhyme gone rotten. Instead of gore, Fulci weaponizes architecture. Grand Tuscan villas frame doorways like open graves, while split diopter shots make corridors look infinite. He collaborated with criminologist consultants to ground the parapsychology, and the screenplay draws on real Italian police files about clairvoyant testimony. Censors were puzzled. There was little nudity and almost no blood, yet the film unnerved them more than Fulci's splatter flicks because it questioned free will itself. Television stations replayed its twist ending during late-night philosophy panels, and crime prevention seminars borrowed its theme of misread signs leading investigators astray. Quentin Tarantino later lifted the signature chime motif for Kill Bill's hospital scene, and South Korean thriller The Gifted Hands cites it as foundational. For viewers in an era of oil shocks and political chaos, 7 Notes in Black whispered that doom might be pre-written, but also that knowledge could rewrite the script. Strip nude for your killer, 1975. If Milan's fashion scene were a switchblade, it would look exactly like Andrea Bianchi's sleazy, neon-slick slasher. After a back-alley abortion turns fatal, a killer in a glossy biker helmet begins slicing through models and photographers at Albatross Agency. Bianchi makes the runway feel like a meat market. Cameras linger on chrome elevator doors, closing like guillotines. Mannequins tumble in slow motion with real couture pinned to them. And every murder is lit as though for a perfume ad. Icy blues, hot pinks, pools of latex shiny blood. Composer Berto Pisano fuses porn-funk bass with Morricone-style whispers, turning each stalk sequence into a fever dream of sex and vengeance. The Italian ratings board demanded 26 cuts. Bianchi refused, so the film released unrated in grindhouses where it became a word-of-mouth sensation among both feminists and exploitation fans. Critics blasted its misogyny, but cultural journals later reframed it as brutal satire, a world where beauty is literally fatal and male gaze turns homicidal. Fashion editors cribbed its biker helmet look for avant-garde shoots, while American slashers like Maniac and Friday the 13th mirrored its strategy of fusing explicit sexuality with unflinching gore. Audiences of 1975 felt a shocked thrill. The film exposed the price of image obsession just as glossy magazines pushed impossibly thin silhouettes. Strip nude for your killer forced a mirror into the decade's face, and though the reflection was ugly, viewers could not look away. 14 blades later, we've learned that the 1970s Giallo wasn't just murder mystery. It was a blood-spattered fashion show, a political scream, a seance for a society losing its innocence. If these crimson-streaked reels left you hungry for more, slice that like button, subscribe for another round of cinematic secrets, and tell us in the comments which gloved killer still haunts your dreams. Until next time, keep your eyes on the shadows and your scarf knots tight.